Hey guys, welcome back to Jessin Reads Romance. I'm Jessin, and today I'm doing a little something that Crystal has actually done in the past. I have tons of books in my Kindle right now, and I just recently, I don't want to call it a book slump, but I just recently came off of a couple of weeks where I just didn't feel like reading. Now that I feel like I'm very interested in a lot of books, I don't know which one to really pick up next. I am currently in the middle of reading one of my Patreon exclusive books that I will be vlogging about, but I want to know what my next book's going to be. So I thought I would do something that Crystal has done before in the past, where she has taken these books that she wanted to read and she's read the first chapter of them, and then she decided like which one interests her most. So I have a lot, and don't want to really make this like an extremely long video. So I think what I'm going to do is maybe 3 or 4. I'll see 3, and if I think that I still want to try out a 4th book, I'll do that one. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Read the first chapter of 3 or 4 books and decide which one interests me most. And I'll talk a little bit about what I've read so far, what I think about the book in the opening chapters, because at least for me, the very first chapter, or the prologue, and the chapter and the prologue together can be something super important to setting the tone and gauging my interest and making sure that I am locked into these characters or the story immediately. I have a much better chance of not DNFing if the first chapter was interesting. Previously, I've read a book in March that the first chapter was so good, and the following chapters after that, to me, were just not on the same level anymore, but I kept expecting the book to get better. I was giving it more of a chance because I was like, but that first chapter was so good. So for me, first chapters are really important. I ended up by giving that book a very low rating because didn't get better. It wasn't great. The first chapter was very strong. The rest of the book was super weak. But I think first chapters for me personally are so important. I get a good sense, at least I've always gotten a good sense the majority of the time, what a rating is going to be for that book from the first chapter. So yeah, I'm excited to do this. Now I have to pick which books that I'm going to start off with. I want to do some different ones. I think the first one that I'm going to start off with is The Coven. It's one that I did see on KU. It was just one of those, like, if you liked this book, then you may like this book. And I've been not quite lucky with those sorts of books. I can't help but be drawn in by this cover. I am someone who's very influenced by covers, and I really like this one. So yeah, let's jump into this completely blind. I'm not going to read the synopsis. I'm just going to read the first chapter and see if I get a good sense of the book. If I don't get a good sense of the book, then I'm going to read the synopsis, and then we'll kind of judge it from there, and I'll let you know what I think about it. But yeah, let's dive in to book 1, The Coven by... Okay, interesting. So it says Harper L. Woods, and either I didn't see this on the cover because now I've opened the book. I don't know if this is a pen name for Adelaide Forrest or if Harper L. Woods and Adelaide Forrest are writing this book together. I have read 2 Adelaide Forrest books, Mafia books, so we'll see. That kind of, I can't say it doesn't influence me one way or the other. I'm biased a little bit against Adelaide Forrest because I think I associate her writing style with a little bit more elementary writing style. Let's see if that influences how I think about this first chapter. Okay. So I read, there was a prologue in chapter 1. I read both of them because I just wanted more information. The prologue was a little bit vague with our hero. His full name is Alaric Grayson Thorne. very paranormally named if there ever was one. It basically is set up exactly like Gothicana. And Gothicana is a book that I did not like. I gave that book 2 stars. It was mostly to do with the writing and the development of the relationship. But since this is so similar in setup, there is a secret university that is only accepting a limited amount of students, and it's going to teach their students witchcraft. But it was closed down mysteriously years ago, and I think that there was murders or whatever, kind of like what happened with Gothicana. And it's a student-teacher romance because Alaric is the headmaster of this school. And it seems that in the synopsis, I haven't gotten the vibe from the prologue or the first chapter that our heroine was apparently raised by her father as a weapon to be used against the school as revenge for something. We don't know what. And she also has a little brother, but they have 2 different dads. And apparently his dad is like really nice according to chapter 1, and her dad was not like his. So I don't know what that means. I'm not interested in something, or I don't want to read Gothicana 2.0. That's just it. I disliked Gothicana. I don't want to read another book that has a very similar setup to it. So that's strike 1. Strike 1 for that book. I will probably be returning it. I won't say that I will never try this book again, especially if somebody else reads the full thing and they're like, oh no, it's worth it. Maybe if I have somebody taste test this book for me and say that they really like it, who has similar taste to me, then I will attempt it again. But as of now, it's gonna be a no for me. Okay, so the next one I want to try out is actually, it's the second book in a series. It's called The Design of Dukes by Kathleen Ayers. I have read the first book in the series previously. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. And I did have a couple of kind of pet peevish issues with the writing. It wasn't anything that I think made the writing bad, but there was some noticeable things that kept cropping up, like habits. Some authors tend to lean on certain phrases, and you will catch them in every single book, or a way of constructing sentences that is very similar and it's repeated in every single book, whatever. Kathleen Ayers, I feel like, has some of those just habits that an editor might catch and say, hey, this sounds very repetitive because you do this very often, so maybe change it up again, maybe change it up a little bit. But sometimes editors aren't looking for something like that, depending on what kind of editor you have. And sometimes that's how I read books, is I'm looking for kind of repetitiveness, and I don't like repetitiveness. If it's obvious, it takes me out the story. But I liked the family in this series. It's called The Beautiful Barringtons. The first book is called The Theory of Earls, and yeah, I gave it 3.25 stars, very specific. So the hero from book 1, he has sisters. I believe they're actually his half-sisters. And I really liked his stepmom because he had a bad relationship with his father, if I remember correctly. So I'm assuming that this book is about one of the sisters, and yeah, Lady Andromeda Barrington. And I'm actually really hoping that I like the first chapter. Well, it says prologue, so I might read the prologue plus chapter 1, just depends on how long the prologue is. And let's see if this one interests me more. Okay, I just have to pause my reading. I'm still in the prologue. But you may or may not have seen me smiling a couple of instances. One of the repetitive things that Kathleen Ayers does that I have noticed, and maybe nobody else would notice this. This is why I don't actually dock points for this type of thing, because it's a personal thing that I notice, and it isn't necessarily bad. It's just something I find noticeable, and it takes me out the story. But she overuses, in my opinion, italicized words that she uses for emphasis. So in this one page, she has 1, 2, 3, 4 in this one page, italicized words, just for emphasis. Her character is really putting an emphasis on that word whenever they're thinking about it. But yeah, it hasn't changed from book 1. But I like the story so far. I'll come back in a second. Okay, so the prologue was enough for me. I don't have to read chapter 1. I'm very intrigued by this first meeting. So I do recognize it's coming back to me, the sisters, the Barrington sisters. Andromeda, family members call her Rami. She is basically a fashion designer. She wants to design dresses, but she's the daughter of a duke, so that's really not done. You don't have a job. And in book 1, she's actually designed dresses for the heroine of book 1. And she's very taken with like lines and fashion and what's fashionable and what's not. And the first prologue, not the first chapter, the prologue is actually a ball that happens in book 1, and Rami is in the shadows. She has seen this lady who's wearing a beautiful gown, and she decides to sketch it. She's very fascinated with the colors and the style and the cut of the dress. So she's sketching it, but somebody comes and blocks her line of sight, and it's a duke, and she calls him Grumpy Gran. He is a grumpy hero, and apparently she, which I was laughing a little bit for this part, she notices that his tailor is incompetent because his coat is not properly tailored. It's not long enough. And then she notices the bulge in his pants, and then she gets embarrassed by it. And yeah, it was a wonderful interaction, wonderful first meeting. And then chapter 1 says 18 months later, so it's been some time. And definitely most interested in this book so far. Definitely. I mean, I'm gonna read this month. I really like the prologue, and I didn't need to read chapter 1 to be more interested in it. So that's a contender. Sorry, Juliet's texting me right now. She is actually supposed to be, she's in the middle of finishing Grim and Barrett, and I am beta reading for her, which I haven't done for the past couple of books just because I've been so busy with school, but I'm very excited. I read the first part of Grim and Barrett as a beta reader, and I'm about to read, hopefully tomorrow, she'll be done with it completely because she still has to do her read through, and I'll be getting the second half, but I think I might read it from the top. Anyway, I digress. She's texting me right now. I'm gonna move on to the next book, and I'm actually gonna move it to this party to the sofa because I don't want to sit on the floor anymore. So we're gonna go over there. Okay, so Juliet has actually finished Grim and Barrett, which is very exciting, very exciting. So that's definitely gonna be priority. But it's time to pick the next book. Let's see what else we have. I think I want to try out Stone Hearts. It's actually a monster romance. So I think that I'm going to read the first chapter for that one. It's by an author that I haven't read before, S.E. Wendell. It's a monster and fae romance, and it's the first book in a series called War of the Underhill. So let's see what this one's about. I like this. So it's more like a historical fantasy than it is straight up fantasy, because it is set in Scotland just in 500 AD, and this is actually a time period that I've read historical fantasies in before. A lot of Juliet Maurier's books are actually set during this time period, and very intrigued by the use of Celtic mythology in here. And I really like our heroine. She is kind of, you consider her fae. Her kind are called guardians, and they were created by the Druids. And as this continent is getting invaded and getting, taken over, they have less of the original people who were there, who the Guardians were sworn to protect. So their numbers are getting fewer and fewer, but there is kind of like this time of year where it's almost a mating ceremony where these guardians may or may not find their mates. And the heroine, I've already forgotten her name, so that's not good. Karis, sorry. So Karis, she is the youngest of three. Her older sisters have already found their mate, and they have gone to live happily ever after with them. But she is actually a disappointment to her mother, especially. and her mother's gotten like worse with age. She's very disappointed because apparently Karis has malformed wings. She's not formed, you know, as splendidly as the rest of the daughters. So I'm kind of getting like almost Cinderella vibes between her, and she's very excited because tonight is the night of the ceremony where you may or may not find your mate. She's planning to go, and her mom just locks her in this cave, and she's like, oh my god, she's like, what if she actually never lets me out, because it seems like she's gone a little crazy. So she's found this like crack in the cave wall to where she's escaping through. So hopefully she finds her mate. Like, I'm invested. I want her to have her happily ever after. I really like it. It's very cute, simple story, but I think that I'm definitely less demanding of a complicated story when it comes to almost monster romances, which this one is falling into the category of according to the series title. So I am definitely interested in reading this one this month, but a little bit more interested in the historical right now. I don't know if I should try out another book or not, because obviously I'm leaning very heavily towards the Kathleen Ayres right now. Okay, I might read one more just because this is one that I got during the sale that happened on March 31st. It's by an author that I've never tried before, Selena Blake, and the title is Seduced by a Cajun Werewolf. And I did download this because it said a Cajun werewolf. Pretty sure it's going to be set in New Orleans. It's always interesting. I'm not saying there can't be Cajuns who live in New Orleans, but Cajuns aren't from New Orleans. And I'm very judgy of people who write about Louisiana who are not from here, because they tend to get it wrong and they tend to mix up Cajun and Creole. So, did I download this to be possibly petty? But I'm willing to be pleasantly surprised, I will say that. So yeah, let's read this prologue. I'm gonna do it. Let's read the prologue. Okay, it says France 200 years ago. I'm sorry, popping in before we get into the hero. No. As beauties went, Violet de Barbarac was the loveliest of them all, inside and out. De Barbarac. Someone has watched Ever After, have they not? Danielle de Barbarac. Interesting. Okay, so I read the prologue and the first chapter. I definitely take issue with this book claiming to have a Cajun werewolf as the hero, as the main hero, because the hero is not Cajun at all. And okay, so the prologue starts 200 years ago in France. So this, our hero, Laurent, he was in love with this woman named Violet, and she tragically died in a fire in France. And then he and his brothers moved to New Orleans. And if it is present day, and that was 200 years ago, it's not even in the right time frame for him to be Cajun, let alone him moving straight to New Orleans from France makes him not a Cajun. Cajuns are French people who migrated to Canada, and they lived in Nova Scotia for years, and then the British conquered Nova Scotia, and then they kicked out the Cajuns because the Cajuns would not swear allegiance. Well, they weren't Cajuns yet. The Acadians, the people who lived in the Acadian area, they would not swear allegiance to Britain. So they got kicked out, booted out, and dispersed. A lot of them settled in Louisiana. That's what makes Cajun. So he's 100% not a Cajun if he moved there straight from France to New Orleans. I'm sorry, you're not a Cajun. So. And then chapter 1 basically ends with him seeing a woman who looks exactly like Violet. Now she has glowing blue eyes, and she just shot a dart at him. So she's either like a supernatural like being hunter, or she's like a vampire. She could be reincarnated, or she could be supernatural being herself. I don't know, but I'm kind of mad about the Cajun part, so I don't think I'll continue reading it. I don't know, never say never, but it's just the little things, man. Just the little things that'll trip you up when a book is being written about a specific culture that you actually belong to, or, you know, being set in a town that you are actually very familiar with, that's very close in proximity to you, all that jazz. So I reserve the right to be a little bit picky whenever it comes to Cajun characters. Okay, so that is it. I am 1000% interested in the Kathleen Ayers book. I can't wait to actually get back into that book. It was incredibly intriguing. And also the Fae book. Those two were definite standouts from here. And I still have like 7 more books that I downloaded. So I don't know, maybe I'll do another one of these, but it was pretty enjoyable. I hope that you didn't mind this style of video that I normally don't do, but I thought it would be a fun way to pass the time on a Sunday. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to get notified on any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys.